Disclaimer. Watch at your own risk. Tonight, we drift into the darkest corners of human history. We slip into a chilling tale from Cleveland, Ohio, where a house on Seymour Avenue hid a secret so dark it shocked the world. A story of captivity, bravery, and a daring escape. On May 6, 2013, a scream broke the quiet, leading to a rescue that feels like a movie. Ariel Castro, a 52-year-old school bus driver, seemed unremarkable, a Puerto Rican immigrant with a love for music and a devout Catholic facade. Born in 1960, he had faced a troubled childhood, abused sexually and physically, which twisted into a need for control and power. By 2002, Castro's life in Cleveland's neighborhood was unraveling. Divorced, fired for reckless driving, his home at Seymour Avenue in foreclosure. Beneath this crumbling exterior, he orchestrated a decade-long nightmare. Between 2002 and 2004, he abducted 3 young women: Michelle Knight, 21st, Amanda Berry, 16, and Gina DeJesus, 14. Each was lured with chilling precision, exploiting trust or vulnerability. Michelle, struggling after losing custody of her son, accepted a ride on August 23, 2002, believing Castro's offer of a puppy. Amanda, working at Burger King, vanished April 21, 2003, after Castro promised to drive her to see his daughter, her friend. Gina, 14, and who was friends with Castro's daughter Arlene, was tricked on April 2, 2004, into helping him move a speaker at his home. Once inside, their descent began, each girl dragged to the basement, wrists bound with ropes, mouths taped, chained to a pole in a damp 10 by 10 foot space. Castro's home, a 1,400 square foot prison, became their world. Its windows boarded, doors padlocked, the outside a distant memory. Castro's crimes bore a signature of calculated cruelty, a sadistic blend of physical and psychological torment. The women were chained in the basement, later moved to barricaded upstairs rooms, their lives dictated by his whim. Michelle endured the worst, raped repeatedly, impregnated 5 times. Each pregnancy ended by starvation and savage beatings. Her stomach punched until blood and tissue spilled, forcing miscarriages. Amanda, pregnant in 2006, gave birth to a daughter, Jocelyn, on Christmas Day in an inflatable pool. Michelle breathing life into the baby as Castro threatened death if she failed. Gina, the youngest, was chained to Michelle, their wrists linked, sharing a bucket for a toilet. The house reeked of sweat, urine, and fear. Plastic buckets overflowed. Food was scarce, showers rare. Castro raped them daily, semen staining their clothes, his violence leaving bruises and broken spirits. He controlled temperature, freezing basement winters, sweltering attic summers, as punishment. Mirrors and alarms rigged the house, ensuring no escape. Yet, moments of twisted normalcy emerged. Amanda taught Jocelyn to read. The women watched The Vampire Diaries when Castro was away, finding flickers of hope. His daughter, fathered with Amanda, was his pride, taken outside occasionally, while the women remained caged, their diaries detailing rape, starvation, and dreams of freedom. The explicit horror lay in the duration: 10 years, 3,650 days of violation, their bodies and minds scarred. yet their bond a quiet rebellion against his tyranny. Castro's evasion was a master class in deceit, his double life chillingly effective. To neighbors, he was a quirky bus driver, playing bass in local bands, attending church, even joining vigils for Gina de Jesus, crocodile tears masking his guilt. His home, outwardly shabby, hid soundproofed rooms, chains concealed behind false walls. Police came close, knocking in 2004 over a bus incident, missing the women's muffled cries. Neighbors reported oddities, a naked woman in the yard, a child in the attic window, but calls were dismissed. Castro's lack of a criminal record and community ties shielded him. Meanwhile, the women's families suffered. Amanda's mother, Lawana, died of heart failure in 2006. Broken by a psychic's false claim, Amanda was dead. The FBI chased leads, but Castro's car, a nondescript Jeep, left no trace. He taunted police, using Amanda's phone to call her mother. "I have Amanda. She's fine." His arrogance grew, believing he'd never be caught, while the women, conditioned by fear, dared not scream during his absences. The unmasking came on May 6, 2013, when Amanda Berry seized a fleeting chance. Castro, careless after a decade, left an inner door unlocked while eating at McDonald's. Amanda, 27, heard her 6-year-old daughter, Jocelyn, moving freely downstairs. A rare lack, heart pounding. She crept to the front door, padlocked but loose, and kicked through the storm door's bottom panel. Screaming, "Help me, I'm Amanda Berry," she caught neighbor Charles Ramsey's ear, mid-bite into a burger. Ramsey and another neighbor, Angel Cordero, pried the door open. Amanda crawling out with Jocelyn, blood on her hands from the effort. Her 911 call was frantic. "I've been kidnapped for 10 years. I'm free now." Police stormed the house, finding Michelle and Gina upstairs, chained, emaciated, but alive. Castro was arrested hours later at a McDonald's. His brothers briefly detained, but cleared. DNA confirmed, thus his daughter. Michelle revealed the forced miscarriages, her body scarred from beatings. The house, a boarded-up tomb, was demolished August 7, 2013, as Michelle released balloons, reclaiming her freedom. Castro's trial was swift, his fate sealed by his own admission. Yeard, charged with 977 counts, 512 kidnappings, 446 rapes, 2 aggravated murders for Michelle's forced miscarriages. He pleaded guilty on July 26, 2013, to 937 counts to spare the women a trial. On August 1st, Judge Michael Russo sentenced him to life without parole plus 1,000 years, a $100,000 fine, and a scathing rebuke. "You are not a victim." Michelle's courtroom statement burned. Castro, denying he was a monster, claimed a sex addiction, but the evidence, diaries, chains, DNA, was damning. On September 3, 2013, a month into his sentence, he took the coward's exit, hanging himself with a bedsheet in his cell, pronounced dead at 53. The women rebuilt. Michelle, now Lily Rose Lee, wrote Finding Me, ran an animal rescue, and married in 2016. Amanda hosts a missing persons segment on Fox 8 News, honoring her mother. Gina founded a non-profit for missing children. By 2025, they've reclaimed their lives, their resilience a beacon. The rain falls, washing away Seymour Avenue scars. But their courage lingers, a light in the dark, as another tale waits to stir. In the misty outskirts of Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, where the Fraser River winds through farmland like a vein of forgotten secrets, a pig farm became the graveyard for dozens of women, their bodies ground into oblivion and possibly scattered into the food chain itself. Robert William Picton, a man whose unassuming life masked a monster's hunger, grew up on that very soil, born in 1949 to a family of farmers who raised pigs in the shadow of urban decay. The farm, sprawling over 17 acres, was a chaotic empire of mud, squeals, and slaughter, where Picton and his brother David hosted wild parties in the Piggy Palace, a converted barn that drew bikers, sex workers, and locals for booze and drugs. Picton's descent wasn't born of a single traumatic snap, but a slow rot. Abused as a child by his domineering mother, Louise, who once forced him to strip naked and scrub in scalding water after soiling himself, he developed a seething hatred for women, viewing them as disposable as the swine he butchered. By the 1990s, as Vancouver's downtown east side teemed with vulnerable women, many indigenous, addicted, or working the streets, Picton prowled the low-track areas in his red pickup truck, luring them with promises of money, drugs, oases, or a ride back to his farm. Serena Abotswe, 29, was one of the first confirmed victims in 2001. He picked her up, drove her to the farm, and in the slaughterhouse shack, raped her vaginally and anally as she screamed, her blood mixing with the pig gore on the concrete floor. He then strangled her with a wire, her neck snapping like a twig, before dragging her limp body to the barn, where hooks dangled from the ceiling. There, he dismembered her with a butcher's knife, slicing through flesh and bone, her intestines spilling out in steaming loops, her limbs hacked off with a chainsaw's roar, the blade grinding through cartilage and spraying blood across his overalls. The parts, torso, head, arms, were tossed into barrels or fed directly to the pigs, the animals snorting and rooting through the human remains, their jaws crunching on bones and tearing at muscle, digesting the evidence in a grotesque cycle of consumption. Mona Wilson, 26, suffered similarly in 2001. After raping her repeatedly, Picton slit her throat, blood gushing in hot arcs as she gurgled her last breaths, then hacked her body apart, her severed head later found in a bucket. Eyes wide in eternal shock, while her limbs were ground into mince and mixed with pig feed, the animals devouring her essence without discrimination. This method became his signature, a farmyard disposal that erased victims efficiently, their DNA mingling with the soil and swine, turning the property into a charnel house where human screams blended with porcine squeals. Picton didn't stop at dismemberment. He bragged to an undercover officer later that he used a rendering plant to process remains, boiling bodies down to fat and bone meal. But the pigs were his primary accomplices, all their voracious appetites consuming flesh that might otherwise betray him. The explicit horror lay in the violation's totality, not just the rapes, where he thrust into unwilling bodies until they bled, but the post-mortem desecration, sawing through rib cages with a handsaw, the wet crack of bones echoing in the barn. Entrails slopped into troughs where pigs lapped at the gore like it was slop. Andrea Joesbury, 22, in 2001, was bound with ropes that cut into her wrists until they bled, raped as she begged for mercy, then bludgeoned with a hammer, her skull caving in with a sickening thud, brains oozing from the fractures before Picton fed her chunks to the herd. The pigs' snouts smeared red as they rooted through her remains. This pattern repeated for years, with Picton targeting the marginalized. Sex workers like Brenda Wolf, 32, whose jawbone was found amid pig feces, or Georgina Papin, 34, whose hand bones were unearthed from them. Each woman's final moments a blur of pain and degradation. The farm's isolation aided his depravity. Surrounded by ditches and fields, screams carried only to indifferent winds, while the constant stench of manure masked the rot of human decay. Picton's brother knew of the parties, but claimed ignorance of the killings, though rumors swirled in the community about missing women and the farm's eerie vibe. For over a decade, from the late 1990s to 2002, Picton evaded scrutiny, his bus driver job providing an alibi, his affable demeanor fooling neighbors who saw him as eccentric but harmless. Police tips about women vanishing after visits to the farm were dismissed. Vancouver's Missing Women Task Force was underfunded, and bias against sex workers delayed action. He hosted barbecues, serving pork from his pigs, pork that may have been tainted with human remnants, as health officials later warned. The possibility of contamination haunts the case. If bodies were fed to pigs, and those pigs slaughtered for meat, sold at local markets, or rendered into products, traces of human DNA could have entered the food supply, a macabre echo of cannibalism unwittingly inflicted on consumers. Investigators found human remains mixed with animal waste, suggesting the pigs didn't fully digest everything. Bones, teeth, and tissue fragments lingered in the pens, potentially ground into sausage or bacon that ended up on plates across British Columbia. Picton even gave meat to friends, boasting about his home-raised pork, while the women's family searched desperately, posters of the missing plastering the east side. His evasion relied on societal apathy. Many victims were indigenous or poor, their disappearances chalked up to lifestyle choices rather than foul play. By 2002, the farm had become a slaughterhouse for humans, with at least 49 women suspected killed, their parts scattered, some in freezers, others in landfills, after pig digestion failed to obliterate all evidence. The turning point came on February 5, 2002, when RCMP raided the farm for illegal firearms, stumbling upon women's IDs and bloody clothing in a trailer. A deeper search revealed horrors: a woman's jawbone in a pig trough, severed hands in a freezer, teeth, and bone fragments in the soil. DNA testing linked remains to missing women like Serena Abotsway, whose partial skull showed saw marks, or Mona Wilson, whose head, hands, and feet were found in buckets preserved in formaldehyde, her flesh gnawed by time and perhaps animals. The explicit details emerged in court. Picton confessed to an undercover cellmate that he killed 49, planning a 50th, describing how he hung bodies on hooks like pigs, gutting them with a knife plunged into the abdomen, pulling out organs in wet handfuls, blood sluicing down drains meant for animal slaughter. He ground meat in an industrial processor, mixing human and porcine flesh, the machine whirring as sinew and bone pulverized. into a pink slurp. Pigs feasted on the offal, their digestive acids breaking down evidence, but not completely. Undigested hair and nails surfaced in manure piles. The contamination fear peaked when officials issued a health advisory in 2004, warning anyone who bought pork from Picton's farm between 1997 and 2002 to discard it, as human remains might have tainted the supply. Potentially exposing eaters to pathogens or worse, the psychological terror of unwitting consumption. Arrested on February 22, 2002, Picton faced 27 murder charges, reduced to 6 for trial in 2007, to avoid overwhelming the jury. The courtroom heard gruesome testimony. Forensic experts described finding women's DNA on dildos attached to guns, suggesting sexual torture before death. Pathologists detailed dismembered torsos with saw cuts through vertebrae, spines splintering like wood. Picton sat impassive, his defense claiming contamination from drug users on the farm, but evidence mounted blood-soaked mattresses, chains with skin fragments, a .8 .22 revolver with a dildo on the barrel, used perhaps in rapes. Convicted on December 9, 2007, of 6 second-degree murders, he received life with no parole for 25 years, the maximum, though suspected of 20 more. Appeals failed, and in 2010, remaining charges were stayed. Picton died on May 31, 2024, after a prison assault, stabbed in the head with a broken broom handle, his brain swelling fatally, a violent end, mirroring his victims. The farm was razed, but the legacy endures. The missing women's inquiry exposed police failures, systemic racism, and the horror of a man who turned a place of life into death's banquet, where pigs became unwitting accomplices, and the meat on tables carried whispers of the vanished. I.T. families like those of Marnie Frey, whose DNA was found in a freezer, or Diane Rock, whose remains were scattered in pig pens, still breathe the contamination rumor of lingering poison, reminding how close evil brushed the everyday. The rain over Port Coquitlam falls heavier now, as if trying to cleanse the earth of blood long since seeped into the soil. But the farm's ghosts remain, a cautionary echo of unchecked depravity. In the humid lowlands of South Carolina's low country, where moss-draped oaks whisper secrets of old money and older sins, a legal dynasty crumbled under the weight of blood, betrayal, and an ever-deepening abyss of revelations that turned a family's legacy into a nightmare without end. Alex Murdaugh, heir to a century-old empire of prosecutors in power, seemed untouchable, a prominent attorney with a sprawling estate called Moselle, a loving wife Maggie, 2 sons Buster and Paul, and a reputation for bending the law to his will without breaking it. Born in 1968 into the Murdaugh clan, Alex grew up in Hampton County, where his great-grandfather founded the family law firm in 1910, and 3 generations served as solicitors, controlling justice like puppeteers. But beneath the veneer of Southern charm lurked a descent fueled by addiction and greed. By the 2010s, Alex was hooked on opioids, popping up to 60 pills a day, his habit funded by embezzling millions from clients who trusted him with their settlement. The first cracks appeared in 2015 with the suspicious death of the family's housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, 57, who fell down the Moselle stairs, cracking her skull open on the concrete. On the concrete, blood pooling around her head as she gasped her last breaths. Officially an accident, but whispers suggested foul play, especially when Alex pocketed $4.30 million from her wrongful death settlement, never giving a dime to her son. Then, in 2018, 19-year-old Mallory Beach died in a boating accident caused by Paul Murdaugh, drunk on vodka and beer, crashing into a bridge, piling at 30 MPa, her body flung into the dark waters, skull fractured, lungs filling with salt water as she drowned, her friends screaming in the chaos. Paul, charged with boating under the influence, faced lawsuits that threatened the family's fortune, but Alex allegedly tampered with evidence, pressuring witnesses and using his influence to delay justice. The layers peeled back further with the 2015 unsolved murder of 19-year-old Stephen Smith, found beaten to death on a rural road, his head bashed in with what looked like a baseball bat, brains exposed in the moonlight, body positioned oddly, no skid marks, no vehicle debris, rumors linking the Murdaughs through Buster's alleged relationship with him, a gay teen in a conservative town, and tips ignored by local police beholden to the family. Alex's opioid spiral deepened, his thefts escalating to over $10 million, siphoned from vulnerable clients like the Pinckney family, whose paralyzed son received nothing from a $500 zero settlement, while Alex snorted lines of crushed pills in his office, eyes glazed, hands trembling as he forged checks. The facade held until June 7, 2021, when the horrors climaxed at the Moselle Kennels, where Maggie, 52, and Paul, 22, were gunned down in a scene of explicit carnage. Paul shot twice with a shotgun, the first blast ripping through his chest, shredding lungs and heart, blood spraying in arcs, the second obliterating his head, brains and skull fragments splattering the dog run like wet confetti, his body crumpling in a heap of gore. Maggie, fleeing toward the ATV shed, was hit 5 times with an AR-15 rifle, bullets tearing through her thigh, abdomen, and chest, one grazing her wrist as she raised her hands in terror. The final shot to the back of her head, exploding her brain matter onto the grass, her body twitching in the dirt as blood soaked the earth. Alex claimed he found them after dinner with his ailing mother, his 911 call theatrical, sobbing about my wife and child, but inconsistencies mounted, no blood on him despite cradling the bodies, his alibi crumbling under cell phone data showing him at the kennels minutes before. The murders weren't random. Prosecutors argued Alex killed to distract from his financial crimes as Paul's boat case hearings loomed, threatening to expose the embezzlement, his opioid-fueled thefts, leaving a trail of forged documents and drained accounts. But the revelations kept worsening. Just 3 months later, on September 4, 2021, Alex staged a botched suicide for insurance, hiring his drug dealer cousin Curtis Eddie Smith to shoot him on a lonely road, the dog at Craig. 38 revolvers, bullet grazing his scalp, blood trickling down his face as he collapsed, claiming a flat-tire assassin, all to secure $10 for Buster amid his crumbling empire. Smith paid $2,000 weekly for opioids, botched the job. The gun's recoil sending the shot wide, exposing Alex's desperation. Police unraveled the plot, charging both, but layers deepened. Alex admitted stealing from Satterfield's sons. Then more clients surfaced, like the Plyler sisters, orphan teens, whose $4 billion settlement vanished into his pockets while he bought luxury boats and fueled his habit. The evasion began to crack in late 2021 as the state grand jury indicted him for fraud. But the murder's investigation intensified with the discovery of Maggie's phone tossed on the roadside, pinging near Alex's location, and ballistics linking family guns to the crime scene. The shotgun's gauge matching Paul's wounds, the rifle's caliber piercing Maggie's flesh. Financial probes revealed he'd stolen $8 million from his firm, PAMP, forging signatures on checks meant for accident victims, like Hakeem Pinckney, quadriplegic after a crash, dying penniless while Alex snorted oxycodone in hidden stashes. The unmasking accelerated in 2022 with 84 financial charges, but the murder trial in January 2023 was the spectacle. Prosecutors painting Alex as a master manipulator, explicit in his deceptions, lying about his whereabouts as video from Paul's phone captured his voice at the kennels. "It's a chicken," he said casually, sealing his presence moments before the shots rang out. Witnesses detailed his opioid rages, sweating through withdrawals, eyes wild as he begged for pills, his addiction a veil for colder calculation. The defense claimed a conspiracy, but the jury saw through it, convicting him on March 2nd, 2023, of 2 murders after 3 hours deliberation, the courtroom gasping as the verdict echoed. Sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without parole, Alex wept crocodile tears, proclaiming innocence, but revelations poured forth like a flood. More fraud indictments, totaling 101 charges for stealing $4 million, including from the estate of a deaf quadriplegic boy. In November 2023, he pleaded guilty to 22 financial crimes, sentenced to 27 years, his once mighty name reduced to inmate hash 3,750 correctional institution. But it worsened. In 2024, federal charges added 22 more counts of conspiracy and money laundering, a 40-year sentence running concurrent. His appeals for a new murder trial, despite claims of jury tampering by Clerk Becky Hill, who allegedly whispered biases to jurors. Her book Deal exposed as motive. By mid-2025, new texts surfaced between Alex and his drug dealer Eddie Smith the day before the murders. "Call me back," and rapid exchanges the morning after, fueling speculation of a hired hit gone wrong or cover-up. Prosecutors dismissing it as irrelevant but defense. Lawyers arguing it could alter strategy, pushing for retrial amid ongoing appeals to the South Carolina Supreme Court in August 2025, where the state countered that evidence was overwhelming. Misconduct claims overblown. Layers kept unfolding. Buster Murdaugh sued Netflix and Warner Bros. In 2024 for defamation, claiming documentaries implied his involvement in Stephen Smith's death. The gay teen's body exhumed in 2023, revealing a bashed skull from a possible bat, not a hit and run. with rumors of Paul's involvement in a hate crime. David's role emerged murkier, accused of knowing about the farm's drug dealings at Moselle, where opioids flowed freely. Gloria Satterfield's fall was re-examined, her sons winning $5 million from Alex in 2022, but suspicions lingered of a push down those stairs, her head cracking open on the brick, brain swelling fatally. Even Paul's boat crash resurfaced, with settlements clawed back from Alex's thefts. The Murdaugh name, once synonymous with power, became a curse. Buster facing his own scandals, like a bar fight and defamation suits. While the family's influence evaporated, the solicitor's office they controlled for 87 years dissolved in disgrace. As of August 2025, Alex's appeals drag on. New texts hinting at deeper conspiracies with Eddie Smith, perhaps tying the murders to drug debts or cover-ups. Prosecutors fighting to uphold the conviction amid jury-influenced probes. The financial web expands, with victims like the Pinckney family still seeking restitution. Alex's assets seized. Moselle sold for $3.90 million. It keeps worsening, each revelation peeling back another layer of rot. Opioid-fueled thefts, bankrolling a double life, suspicious deaths, orbiting the family like ghosts, a botched suicide exposing desperation. And now texts suggesting the kennel bloodbath was no impulsive act, but a calculated purge. The Low Country whispers of more to come, appeals potentially granting a retrial unearthing horrors, while Maggie and Paul's graves lie silent, their killer's web unraveling yet tightening around a dynasty's corpse. The rain over Hampton County falls relentlessly, as if trying to drown the bloodstains. But the Murdaugh saga deepens, a bottomless pit of sin, where every unearthed truth drags the story into darker depth, leaving only unease as another tale waits to stir. In the shadow of Long Island's windswept dunes, where the Atlantic whispers secrets to the shore, a string of murders unfolded, so bizarre and elusive, it haunts America like a ghost that refuses to rest. The Long Island serial killer, Lisk, a phantom predator, turned the quiet beaches of Gilgo and Ocean Parkway into a graveyard. His crimes a chilling enigma that, as of August 2025, remains unsolved, with each revelation deepening the mystery. From 2010 to 2011, 11 sets of human remains surfaced along the desolate stretch of Suffolk County, New York. Their discovery sparked by a missing woman's desperate flight, leaving a trail of bodies and questions that twist like the marsh reeds. The case's strangeness lies not just in the killings, but in the eerie patterns, missed chances, and a suspect who may or may not be the key, making it a puzzle where every piece seems to fit nowhere. The descent began on May 1st, 2010, when Shannon Gilbert, a 24-year-old escort from Jersey City, vanished from Oak Beach after a client visit. She'd been hired by Joseph Brewer, driven by Michael Pack, and last seen sprinting into the night, banging on doors, screaming, "They're trying to kill me?" During a 23-minute 911 call, her voice raw with panic as footsteps echoed behind her. Her disappearance triggered a search that, on December 11, 2010, uncovered a skeletal woman in a burlap sack along Ocean Parkway. Not Shannon, but Melissa Barthélemy, 24, a sex worker missing since July 2000. 2 days later, 3 more bodies emerged nearby. Maureen Brainard Barnes, 25, Megan Waterman, 22, and Amber Lynn Costello, 27. All escorts, all strangled, their bodies wrapped in burlap, dumped like refuse. By April 2011, 6 more sets of remains were found. Jessica Taylor, 20, and Valerie Mack, 24, both dismembered, their heads and hands severed with surgical precision, torsos found miles away in Manorville. An unidentified Asian male, 1723, cross-dressed, bludgeoned to death, a toddler, 16, 24 months, and her mother, Tanya Denise Jackson, nicknamed Peaches, both biracial, killed by unknown means, and Karen Vergata, whose skull and legs washed up separately. Shannon's body was found in a marsh near Oak Beach in December 2011, her hyoid bone broken, suggesting strangulation, though police controversially ruled her death a psychotic accident tied to her bipolar disorder. The explicit horror was visceral. Melissa's body, decayed to bones, bore ligature marks from a belt, her skin long eaten by time. Jessica's torso, hacked apart, showed saw marks through vertebrae. Blood long dried. The toddler's tiny skeleton lay tangled with her mother's, their identities a lingering wound. The killer's reach spanned decades. Some remains dated to 1996. His victims, mostly sex workers, chosen for their vulnerability, their lives erased in a ritual of control and disposal. The list's signature was chillingly methodical, a blend of sadism and evasion that baffled investigators. Most victims were strangled, likely with a black leather belt embossed with Cab and Near, or Wajabias, its leather stained with sweat and blood. Diogo 4, Melissa, Maureen, Megan, Amber were wrapped in burlap, suggesting access to industrial sacks, possibly from a trade like landscaping or farming. Their bodies placed in a tight cluster along Ocean Parkway, a desolate strip where gulls drowned out screams. The dismembered victims, like Jessica and Valerie, showed a shift. Limbs cut with a power saw, flesh stripped to bone, parts scattered to confuse identification, a calculated escalation from whole-body dumps. The killer taunted, calling Melissa's sister from her phone, his voice low and mocking. "I'm watching your sister's body rot," made from Times Square to avoid tracking, a sadistic flourish that marked his control. The Asian male and toddler broke the pattern, bludgeoning instead of strangulation, a child's death hinting at collateral cruelty, suggesting either a single killer's evolving urges or multiple perpetrators, a debate that fuels the case's strangeness. The bodies, some skeletal, others mummified by salt air, were hidden in dense thickets, invisible from the road, the killer's knowledge of the terrain intimate. Perhaps a local who walked these beaches as a hunter stalks prey. The explicit brutality lay in the disposal. Bodies left to rot under brambles, bones gnawed by wildlife, skulls staring eyeless at the sky, a tableau of death that mocked the living. Evasion was the list's forte, a shadow slipping through a decade of missed opportunities. From 1996 to 2010, Vancouver's downtown east side saw similar killings, and theories linked List to cross-country travels, but no DNA or fingerprints pinned him. Suffolk County Police faced criticism for bias. Sex workers' cases were low priority, leads ignored, like tips about a white male in a truck near Gilgo. Shannon's 911 call, unreleased until 2022, revealed police inaction. Her mother, Marie, killed by her own daughter Sarah in 2016, fought for answers, believing Shannon was murdered. Dr. Peter Hackett, an Oak Beach resident, called Mari days after Shannon's disappearance, claiming he'd treated her, then recanted, his phone records confirming the lie, sparking theories of his involvement, though he was never charged. The FBI joined in 2015, but leads fizzled: cell tower pings, burner phones, nothing concrete. The case's strangeness grew with speculation. Was it one killer or two, given the differing motives? Did police corruption, as alleged in podcasts like Unravel, stall progress with rumors of officers partying at Oak Beach, ignoring cries? The community lived in fear, ribbons tied for the missing, while internet sleuths scoured forums chasing ghosts. The unmasking seemed near on July 14, 2023, when Rex Hoyerman, a 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, was arrested, charged with the Gilgo 4 murders. His DNA from a pizza box crust matched traces on the burlap, and cell tower data placed his burner phones near victims' disappearances. His home, 15 miles from Gilgo, held 200 guns, a bunker, and a chilling Google search history. Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? His wife's hair was found on a victim, though she was abroad during the killings, suggesting transfer from Hoyerman's clothes. Explicitly, his searches included torture porn and a belt with beaten. Yet, the case remains unsolved. Hoyerman denies guilt, no charges for the other 7 bodies, and his attorney claims is a scapegoat. As of August 2025, he awaits trial, with new evidence like victim sketches found in his home adding layers, but no conviction. The other deaths, dismembered victims, the toddler, Shannon, hang unresolved. Some experts arguing a second killer, given the Manorville remains predating Hoyerman's suspected timeline. The outcome is a lingering wound. Hoyerman's arrest brought hope, but no closure. Families of the Gilgo 4 wait for justice, while others, like Jessica Taylor's, beg for answers. The toddler's mother, Peaches, remains a Jane Doe, her child's tiny bones a silent plea. Suffolk County's task force, formed in 2022, released 911 transcripts and belt photos, but leave dry up. The case's strangeness persists. A killer, or killers, who vanished into Long Island sprawl, a community complicit in ignoring the marginalized, and a suspect whose guilt, if true, only explains half the horror. The explicit toll is etched in the victims' fates: strangled, hacked, discarded, their flesh rotting in salt air, their stories buried until a dog walker stumbled upon them. The rain falls on Gilgo Beach, washing sand over bone fragments, but the Lisk's shadow lingers, an unsolved riddle where truth seems just out of reach, fading into the fog as another tale waits to stir. In the quiet town of Merced, California, where almond groves stretch under the Sierra Nevada shadow, the Stainer family's story unfolded like a dark screenplay, scripted with trauma, heroism, and horror that feels ripped from a Hollywood thriller. Stephen and Carrie Stainer, brothers born 4 years apart, became the center of a saga that spans decades, their lives intertwined with crime's extremes. One, a victim who turned hero; the other, a monster who stained their name with blood. The narrative, beginning in 1972 and spiraling through 1999, is a chilling blend of abduction, survival, and serial murder. each twist more gut-wrenching than the last, as if fate conspired to make their tale a study in contrast. Too wild to seem real, yet etched in the raw, explicit pain of human tragedy. The story's opening act struck on December 4th, 1972, when 7-year-old Stephen Stainer, a slight boy with trusting eyes, walked home from Charles Wright Elementary. A sleety afternoon turned sinister as Kenneth Parnell, a convicted child molester, and his accomplice Irvin Murphy pulled up in a white Buick. Murphy, posing as a church representative, lured Stephen with talk of donations, asking if his mother could spare items. Innocent and obliging, Stephen climbed into the car, unaware he'd be driven not home, but to a cabin in Cathays Valley, just 38 miles away, where Parnell's depravity awaited. That first night, Parnell molested him, hands violating the boy's small frame, the cabin's walls muffling his cries. For 7 years, Stephen endured rape and psychological torment. Parnell, calling himself Dad, told him his parents couldn't afford him, renaming him Dennis Gregory Parnell. Stephen's body bore the scars of abuse. Parnell and accomplice Barbara Mathias raped him 9 times at age 9, their hands pinning him as he screamed, his childhood shredded like paper. Moved across California, Santa Rosa, Compsch, Mendocino, Stephen attended school, his outward normalcy a mask for nightly horrors, his wrists bruised from restraints, his spirit battered by Parnell's lies. Meanwhile, the Stainer family, parents, Delbert and Kay, and siblings Carrie, Cynthia, Jody, and Corey, searched relentlessly, plastering posters, their hope fading into despair. Carrie, then 11, wished on stars for his brother's return. His own childhood, warped by the void Stephen left, a loss that festered into neglect as his parents fixated on the missing boy. Stephen's heroism emerged in 1980, a climactic twist worthy of a film's third act. At 14, he'd grown defiant, sabotaging Parnell's attempts to kidnap other boys, knowing their fate. When Parnell abducted 5-year-old Timothy White in Ukiah on February 14, 1980, Stephen saw the boy's terror. Timothy's small body trembling, eyes wide with fear as Parnell loomed, unable to let another suffer his nightmare. Stephen waited until Parnell left for work on March 1st, then fled with Timothy, hitchhiking 40 miles to a Ukiah police station. "I know my first name is Stephen," he declared, his voice cracking but resolute, a line immortalized in the 1989 miniseries, "I know my first name is Stephen." Timothy's tiny hand clutched his, their escape a beacon of courage. Parnell was arrested, convicted of kidnapping, and sentenced to 7 years, though he served only 5, a judicial slap that enraged many. Stephen's return was a media frenzy, his face on Good Morning America, but the hero's homecoming south. At 14, he'd age into a stranger, smoking, drinking, and clashing with a family expecting their 7-year-old back. Bullied at school for his abuse, called homophobic slurs, his trauma untreated, his father Delbert dismissed therapy. Stephen dropped out, married Jody Edmondson at 20, and had 2 children, Ashley and Stephen Jr. His life ended tragically on September 16, 1989, at 24, when a car swerved into his motorcycle, his helmetless head smashing pavement, blood pooling as he died en route to the hospital, leaving a legacy of bravery and pain. Carrie Stainer's arc, The story's dark counterpoint turned the narrative into a horror film. Born August 13, 1961, Carrie was the eldest, a quiet boy whose intelligence shone in cartoons for Merced High's newspaper, earning him Most Creative in 1979. But Stephen's abduction scarred him. He later told police he felt neglected, his parents' grief sidelining him. At 3, diagnosed with trichotillomania, he pulled his hair out, bald spots forcing him to wear a baseball cap, a target for bullies. By adolescence, he exposed himself to a sister's friend, a disturbing sign of impulses he later admitted began at 7, fantasizing about killing women before Stephen's kidnapping. The media spotlight on Stephen's return, culminating in the Emmy-nominated miniseries, left Carrie in shadow, his resentment brewing. After high school, he drifted, a window installer with a marijuana arrest in 1997, his mental health fraying. In 1991, he attempted suicide by carbon monoxide. In 1995, a psychiatric hospital stay followed a breakdown. By 1997, he was a handyman at Cedar Lodge near Yosemite, a loner whose rage simmered beneath a nice guy facade. In 1999, Carrie's darkness erupted, transforming him into the Yosemite Killer. On February 15th, at Cedar Lodge, he knocked on room 509, claiming a plumbing issue. Inside were Carol's son, 42, her daughter Julie, 15, and Silvina Palazzo, 16, an Argentine exchange student, with a .22 pistol. He bound them with duct tape, their wrists chafing, blood seeping as they begged. Sold me, He strangled Carol with rope, her neck snapping, face purpling as life drained. Silvina was next, raped and strangled, her body limp, eyes frozen in terror. Julie endured hours of sexual assault, screaming as Carrie violated her, then drove her to Don Pedro Reservoir, slashing her throat, blood gushing in hot arcs, her body left to rot. Their charred remains were found in a torched rental car, Julie's body miles away, identified by an anonymous note Carrie sent, taunting, "We had fun with this one." On July 21st, he targeted Joy Armstrong, 26, a Yosemite naturalist, luring her with Bigfoot talk what. Alone, he attacked, raping her as she fought, then beheaded her with a knife, her head rolling, blood soaking the cabin floor, her body dumped near Crane Creek. Arrested July 24, 1999. After his Blue International Scout was traced, Carrie confessed to FBI agents, his voice flat, detailing the killings, his semen and hairs linking him to the scenes. Convicted in 2002, he received death for the San Palazzo murders and life without parole for Armstrongs, now awaiting execution at San Quentin. The Stainer saga's wildness lies in its cinematic duality. Stephen, the abducted child who saved another, only to die young. Carrie, the neglected brother turned predator, his crimes echoing the evil that stole Stephen's childhood. The explicit horror is unrelenting. Stephen's body violated for years, his innocence torn away, Carrie's victims bound, raped and butchered, their blood staining Yosemite's serenity. The family's unraveling adds layers. Delbert's obsession with Stephen's case neglected Carrie, fostering resentment. Stephen's untreated trauma left him adrift. Carrie's mental illness, ignored, festered into murder. The 1989 miniseries, with Stephen cameoing as a cop, and the 2022 Hulu docuseries Captive Audience cemented their story's mythic status, a real-life tragedy scripted like fiction. Merced's community, once hopeful for Stephen's park naming, recoiled at Carrie's crimes, rejecting the honor. As of August 2025, Carrie remains on death row. Stephen's legacy endures in a statue with Timothy White and the Stainer tale. A hero and a killer from one bloodline. Feels like a movie too dark to fathom, yet too real to forget. A trusted neighbor in a sleepy Idaho town wove a twisted tale of aliens and love, stealing a young girl's life not once, but twice, right under her family's nose. In the early 1970s, Pocatello, Idaho, was a safe, tight-knit place where the Broberg family, Bob, Mary Ann, and their three daughters, Jan, Karen, and Susan, lived a simple, happy life. They went to church, trusted their neighbors, and left their doors unlocked. Into their world came Robert Bertolli, a charming man in his late 30s with a wife and 5 kids. Everyone called him BB. He seemed perfect, funny, kind, and part of their Mormon church community. He spent hours at the Broberg's house, laughing with Bob, complimenting Mary Ann, and playing with the girls, especially 12-year-old Jan. But B wasn't what he seemed. His smiles hid a sick obsession with Jan, and he slowly pulled her into his darkness. It started small, hugs that lasted too long, asking to spend time alone with her, even convincing her parents to let him sleep in her bed for therapy. Bob and Mary Ann, blinded by his charm, didn't see the danger. They trusted him like family, not knowing he was plotting to take Jan away. His obsession grew, and soon he wasn't just a friend. He was a predator, using their trust to get closer to his prey. Bertol's crimes were unforgettable because of the creepy, almost unbelievable way he controlled Jan's mind. In October 1974, he offered to take her horseback riding, a fun outing for a girl who loved animals. But he tricked her, giving her pills he said were for allergies. They knocked her out cold. When Jan woke up, she was tied to a bed inside Bay's motorhome, her wrists and ankles strapped down. A strange voice came through a speaker, claiming to be aliens from a dying planet. It told Jan she was half alien, chosen for a mission to have a baby with B to save their world. If she didn't obey by age 16, the voice said her dad, her sister Karen, would go blind, or her little sister Susan would be taken. Terrified and confused, Jan believed it. For over a month, B drove her to Mexico, assaulting her over and over. In Mexico, he married her in a sick legal ceremony. She was only 12, but the law there allowed. The alien story wasn't just a trick. It was his twisted signature, a way to scare Jan into thinking she had to obey him to protect her family. It made her feel trapped, like she had no choice but to let him hurt her. Berchtold was a master at hiding in plain sight, fooling everyone around him. Before he took Jan, he got close to her parents in a way that was almost too clever. He seduced Mary Ann, flirting with her until she felt drawn to him. He also manipulated Bob into a sexual act, then used it to blackmail him, knowing Bob would be too ashamed to tell anyone. When he kidnapped Jan in 1974, he told her parents he had their permission to take her on a trip. They even signed papers saying so, too charmed or scared to question him. When the FBI got involved, B lied, saying he had a mental breakdown and married Jan to protect her in Mexico. The Brobergs waited days to report her missing, thinking B would never hurt her. His lies worked. He got a 5-year sentence, but it was cut to 45 days, and he served only 10. After he got out, he kept seeing Jan, calling her, and convincing her she loved him because of the alien story. In 1976, he kidnapped her again, this time pretending to be a CIA agent. He took her to a Catholic school in California, telling the nuns he and Jan were hiding from danger. For 4 months, he lived openly, charming everyone, while Jan lived under his control. His charm, the Brobergs' trust, and the 1970s obsession with UFOs let him slip through the cracks, keeping Jan hidden while he acted like a hero. Catching Berthold was like waking up from a bad dream that wouldn't end. After the first kidnapping, the FBI found Jan in Mexico. After tracking Diaz's motorhome to Mazatlan, they brought her home, and the marriage was undone. But Beth's hold on her mind didn't break. He kept calling, visiting, and feeding her the alien lies. When he took her again in 1976, the FBI got suspicious fast. They followed tips to the California school, where BS fake CIA story started falling apart. The nuns, at first fooled, let Jan go when the FBI showed up. B was arrested again, but he played the crazy card, saying he wasn't in his right mind. Instead of prison, he got 5 months in a mental hospital. Jan, still believing the aliens, was trapped in his lies until she was 16. In 1978, at a theater camp far from B, she started to doubt the alien story. To test it, she thought about hurting herself and her sister Karen, but when nothing happened, she realized it was all fake. She told her parents everything, and they finally saw how B had used them all. It was a slow, painful wake-up, but the family started to heal, holding tight to each other despite the hurt. Berchtold's end came years later, leaving a mix of relief and questions. In 2003, Jan and Marianne wrote a book, Stolen Innocence, the Jan Broberg story, telling the world what happened. B didn't like that. He showed up at their talks, yelling that they were lying, trying to scare them into silence. Jan stood strong, getting a restraining order in 2004 that kept him away for life. In 2005, B got in trouble again. He attacked members of a group called Bikers Against Child Abuse at one of Jan's events. Facing new charges, he killed himself with an overdose of pills, escaping justice one last time. His death was a relief for Jan, who grew up to be an actress and now runs a theater in Utah, using her story to help others spot predators. But the unease lingers. 6 other women later said B abused them as kids, meaning his crimes went even deeper than anyone knew. The Brobergs rebuilt their lives, though it wasn't easy. Bob passed away in 2018. Marianne kept going, and Jan forgave her parents for trusting B. They learned the hard way that evil can hide behind a friendly face. As the rain whispers against the window, the hum of Berchtold's motorhome fades into the night, his alien voice growing quiet. But another shadow moves in the darkness, another friendly smile hiding a secret, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. A mother lost in doomsday dreams turned her own family into victims, burying her children in a backyard grave to chase a twisted prophecy of the end of the world. In the beginning, Lori Vallow seemed like a normal mom living a busy life. Born in 1973, she grew up in California and had a string of marriages. Her first was at 19, then another that gave her a son named Colby. Her third husband, Joseph Ryan, was Tylee's dad, but they split after fights, and Joseph died of a heart attack in 2018. Lori married Charles Vallow in 2006, a kind businessman, and they adopted little Joshua J.J. Vallow, who had autism, in 2014. The family moved around, Arizona, Hawaii, back to Arizona, and friends said Lori was patient with JJ and close to her teen daughter Tylee. But things changed around 2017. Lori got hooked on books about the end of the world, written by a man named Chad Daybell. Chad was a Mormon author from Idaho, married to Tammy Daybell with 5 kids, who wrote stories about surviving the apocalypse. Lori started listening to podcasts about doomsday prep and ex-Mormon ideas. In October 2018, she met Chad at a religious event in Utah. They hit it off right away, talking about past lives and being married before in heaven. They started a secret affair, using fake email names and burner phones. Lori began to believe crazy things, like people could be light or dark spirits, and dark ones were zombies that needed to die to free their soul. Chad called himself a prophet, and they formed a small group with Lori's brother Alex Cox, her niece Melanie Boudreau, and friends like Melanie Boudreau, and friends like Melanie Gibb. Lori's marriage to Charles fell apart. She called him a demon and threatened to kill him. Charles got scared, filed for divorce in February 2019, and told police Lori thought she was a god getting ready for Jesus' return in July 2020. He worried for the kids' safety, but Lori pulled back the divorce, and the slide into darkness sped up. On July 11, 2019, Charles went to Lori's house in Chandler, Arizona, to pick up JJ for school. He argued with Alex Cox, who shot him twice in the chest while Charles was on the floor. Alex said it was self-defense, claiming Charles swung a bat, but police later said it looked planned. Lori acted calm. She took JJ to school, went to Burger King, and shot. No charges came right away. Lori moved to Rexburg, Idaho, near Chad, with Tylee, JJ, and Alex. Her obsession grew. She and Chad texted about getting rid of obstacles like spouses and kids they saw as zombies. Tylee, at 16, argued with Lori a lot, and JJ's energy was too much. They believed killing zombies was okay to save the world. What made Lori's crime so disturbing was her cold religious twist on murder, like turning death into a holy act. She and Chad rated people on a light and dark scale, saying dark spirits took over bodies, making them zombies that had to die before the end times. For Tylee and JJ, Lori called them possessed. On September 8, 2019, Lori, Tylee, JJ, and Alex went to Yellowstone Park, the last photo of Tylee alive. That night or next day, Tylee was killed, maybe by Alex. Her body was burned in a fire pit on Chad's land, her bones broken, hands cut off, flesh hacked with a pickaxe and shovel. Parts were so charred, doctors couldn't say exactly how she died, but it was violent, dismembered to hide her. JJ vanished on September 23, 2019. Melanie Gibb was visiting, and Alex carried a sleeping JJ upstairs. Lori said JJ was acting like a zombie, hyper and biting. That night, JJ was suffocated, maybe with a plastic bag over his head and duct tape around his mouth and arms. His little body was wrapped tight in black plastic and more tape, like a package, with his red pajamas on and a blanket. They buried him shallow under rocks in Chad's yard, next to Tylee's burned remains in the pet cemetery. Chad texted Tammy about shooting a raccoon and burying it there, code for Tylee's body. This signature was gruesome, not just killing, but destroying bodies to erase them, all while preaching it was God's will. They did the same to others. On October 9, 2019, Alex tried to shoot Tammy Daybell with what she thought was a paintball gun, but it was a real rifle that jammed. 10 days later, Tammy was smothered in her bed, maybe poisoned first with something to make her weak. Her body showed foam from her mouth, bruises on her arms, like she fought back. Chad got $430,000 in insurance. And earlier, on October 2nd, Alex shot at Brandon Boudreaux, Lori's niece's ex-husband, from Charles's old Jeep, missing his head by inches, another zombie target. Lori was great at hiding her tracks, fooling everyone with lies and quick moves. After Charles died, she told friends he had a heart attack, not that he was shot. When Tylee and JJ went missing, she said Tylee was at college in Idaho and JJ was with Melanie Gibb in Arizona. But Tylee never enrolled anywhere, and Gibb said no. Lori pulled JJ from school, saying she'd homeschool him. Neighbors saw JJ playing, then nothing. Lori kept up a happy face. 2 weeks after Tammy's death, she and Chad married on a Hawaii beach, dancing in wedding clothes, no kids in sight. They used Tammy's insurance money to live fancy, renting a townhouse. When police did a welfare check on November 26, 2019, Lori and Alex lied about JJ being away. They fled to Hawaii in January 2020, ignoring a court order to show the kids. Lori told police the children were safe with family, but wouldn't say where. Alex died suddenly in December 2019 from a blood clot. Some think suicide or poison to keep quiet. Their cult friends helped cover. Melanie Gibb at first lied for them, but later told the truth. Lori used religion to dodge questions, saying God protected her. For months, no one knew where the kids were, as Lori and Chad partied in paradise. The truth came out like a storm breaking. In January 2020, after Lori missed the court deadline, police named her and Chad as suspects. On February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested in Hawaii for abandoning her kids and lying to police. They found Tylee's bank card and JJ's iPad with her. She was sent back to Idaho in March. Then, on June 9, 2020, cops searched Chad's yard. His phone pings led them there. They dug up horror. Tylee's charred bones in the fire pit, hacked and burned, and JJ's wrapped body nearby, with Lori's hair stuck in the tape and Alex's fingerprint. Chad watched from his car, texting Lori they found something, then was arrested that day for hiding bodies. More charges came in May 2021, both indicted for murdering Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, plus conspiracy. Arizona charged Lori for Charles's death and the shot at Brandon. Trials were split. Lori's Idaho trial started April 2023. She didn't testify, but evidence showed texts about removing zombies. Guilty of all counts May 12, 2023. Lori's end leaves a chill, even in justice. In July 2023, she got 3 life sentences without parole in Idaho, ranting in court about seeing her dead kids in heaven, smiling like it was all fun. Chad's trial in 2024 ended with guilty verdicts too. He got the death penalty in June 2024 for the murders, now appealing from prison. In Arizona, Lori faced more, convicted April 2025 for conspiring to kill Charles, and June 2025 for the attempt on Brandon. She got another life term, acting wild in court, faking sick, showing up in a wheelchair, yelling at the judge. She represented herself sometimes, saying she protected her family. But victims spoke out. Colby called her a monster. Lori's in prison forever. Chad waits for execution. Their cult dreams killed 5. Charles shot down. Tammy smothered, Tylee burned and chopped. JJ taped and buried. Even Alex dead mysteriously. More might have died if not stopped. Families grieve. Jay's grandparents adopted his name, fighting for justice. Lori claims innocence, but the graves say different. Evil hid in prayers and smiles. As the rain patters on, the whispers of zombies and end times drift away into the fog. But another shadow creeps close, a quiet figure with secrets buried deep, ready to unearth the next nightmare. A trusted friend turned into a cold-blooded killer, stabbing her dying best friend over 50 times and framing the innocent husband to pocket a life insurance payout, all while spinning a deadly web that claimed more lives. Pam Hupp seemed like an ordinary woman from Missouri, born in 1958, working as an insurance clerk, married with kids, and living a quiet suburban life. But beneath her friendly smile hid a calculating mind driven by greed and a thirst for control. In the early 2000s, Pam befriended Betsy Faria, a cheerful mother of 2 daughters who worked at State Farm Insurance with her. Betsy, married to Russ Faria since 2000, was the heart of her family, hosting game nights and cherishing time with her girls despite her battle with breast cancer that started in 2009. By 2011, Betsy's cancer had spread to her liver, leaving her weak and facing the end. Pam inserted herself deeply into Betsy's life, driving her to chemotherapy sessions, offering emotional support, and even convincing Betsy to change the beneficiary on her $150 zero life insurance policy from Russ to Pam, just 4 days before Betsy's death. Pam claimed it was to protect the money for Betsy's daughters, but Russ later said he never agreed. As Betsy's health faded, Pam's obsession grew. She began badmouthing Russ to Betsy, planting seeds of doubt about his fidelity and temper. Russ, a hard-working guy who loved poker nights with friends, had no idea Pam was plotting. The descent quickened on December 27, 2011. Betsy, exhausted from chemo, spent the day with Pam, who dropped her off at home around 7 p.m. Russ was out at a friend's house for movie night, with alibis from 4 people and receipts from stores. Alone with Betsy, Pam's greed boiled over. She grabbed a serrated kitchen knife from the Farias home and attacked her frail friend in the living room. Betsy, too weak to fight much, was stabbed 55 times. Deep wounds to her head, neck, arms, and torso, some slicing through. Blood sprayed across the couch and floor as Betsy gasped her last breath. Pam then jammed the knife into Betsy's neck, posed her body to look like a suicide at first, but smeared blood around to suggest a struggle, even dipping Betsy's sock in blood to leave footprints. She called 911 anonymously, pretending to be Russ, but hung up. When Russ came home at 9 p.m., he found the horrific scene. His wife's body sprawled, cold and mutilated, and screamed in horror, dialing emergency services. Pam's motive, that insurance money, plus a twisted thrill in manipulating lives, setting the stage for more killing. What made Pam's crimes so gruesomely unforgettable was her savage overkill and the blatant staging, turning a home into a slaughterhouse while exploiting Betsy's vulnerability. The 55 stab wounds weren't just to kill. They were frenzy, explicit rage, puncturing Betsy's eyes, slashing her throat so deep it nearly severed her head, and carving into her chest, where cancer had already ravaged her. Autopsy showed defensive cuts on her hands, meaning Betsy tried to block the blade as her friend loomed over her, knife rising and falling in a bloody frenzy. Pam didn't stop there. She wiped the handle, but left the knife protruding from Betsy's neck like a macabre trophy, and arranged the body on the floor with legs splayed, arms akimbo, blood pooling in thick puddles that soaked the carpet. Why praise it? To frame Russ, Pam planted subtle clues, like using Betsy's phone to text herself earlier, creating a timeline that implicated him. This signature of excessive violence mixed with calculated deception marked Pam's style. Not content with murder, she desecrated the body, ensuring the scene screamed husband's rage while she played the grieving friend. Years later, this pattern repeated in her other kills, like shooting Louis Gumpenberger in 2016, luring the disabled man to her home with a fake Dateline producer story, then blasting him point blank with a revolver. Planting a note to make it look like Russ hired him for revenge. Even her mother's death in 2013, Shirley Neumann fell suspiciously, falling off a balcony after Pam collected $200,000 in policies, ruled accidental but reeked of foul play, with inconsistencies in Pam's story. Pam was a master manipulator, evading justice by charming authorities and weaving lies that ensnared innocence. Right after Betsy's murder, Pam rushed to the scene, tearfully telling police Russ was abusive and had threatened to kill Betsy for insurance money. She claimed Betsy feared Russ, despite no evidence, and her testimony sealed his fate. Lincoln County Prosecutor Leah Askey, fixated on Russ as the spouse, ignored Pam's beneficiary change and her lack of alibi. Police overlooked Pam's bloody clothes from hugging Betsy and didn't test her fully. Russ was arrested days later, convicted in 2013 based on Pam's words, and sentenced to life despite his ironclad alibi, witnesses, timestamps, even cell pings placing him miles away. Pam collected the $150,000, then lavishly, and moved on. When Russ won a retrial in 2015, after appeals exposed tunnel vision, Pam testified again, changing her story to say Betsy wanted the money hidden from Russ, but the judge excluded her, and Russ was acquitted. To dodge scrutiny, Pam faked an attack in 2016, killing Lewis to portray herself as a victim of Russ's plot, claiming self-defense. Cops bought it initially, charging her lightly until Dateline exposed holes, like buying the gun days before and the planted note with Russ's name misspelled. Even as suspicions mounted, Pam used her folksy charm, playing the innocent widow. Her husband, Mark, supported her and relocated to O'Fallon, Missouri, staying free until 2019. Her evasion exploited small-town naivety, prosecutorial bias, and her own brazen lies, letting her kill again while Russ rotted in prison for years. The unmasking of Pam came gradually, like peeling back layers of deceit in a nightmare that refused to end. After Russ's 2015 acquittal, he sued the county, winning $2 in 2016 for wrongful conviction, spotlighting Pam's role. Dateline NBC's 2014 episode, The Thing About Pam, later a miniseries with Renee Zellweger, drew national eyes, revealing Pam's inconsistency. In 2016, after killing Lewis, she was charged with murder, not self-defense, as evidence showed staging. The note on Lewis's body read like a bad script, and ballistics proved close-range execution. Convicted in 2019, Pam got life without parole. But for Betsy's case, it took new prosecutor Mike Wood in 2021 to charge Pam with first-degree murder, citing the insurance motive, her presence as the last to see Betsy alive, and blood evidence. Pam was arrested at Chillicothe Correctional Center, where she was already imprisoned. Charges were dropped in 2022 for speedy trial issues, but refiled in 2023. In 2024, her trial venue changed to St. Charles County due to publicity, and in June 2025, a bombshell. Former detective Mike Merkel was charged with perjury for lying about Russ's alibi in the original trial, admitting he fabricated details under pressure. This cracked the old case wide open. With Merkel facing felonies, Pam fought evidence, arguing for DNA tests, but lost motions. As of now, Pam's final fate hangs in suspense, blending relief with ongoing dread. In January 2025, her trial was set for August 3, 2026, 15 years after Betsy's slaughter, due to delays from appeals and evidence disputes. She's 66, serving life for Lewis murder, but denies killing Betsy, claiming innocence in rants from prison. In May 2025, she battled to keep her $3 monthly prison wages from Shirley Newman's estate, showing her greed persists. Russ, exonerated and remarried, pushes for justice, unconcerned by delays if fair. Betsy's daughters, scarred, have distance from Pam's shadow. Investigators probe if Pam's a serial killer, linking her to Shirley's accident and possibly others, but no charges yet. Pam rots in isolation, her web unraveled, yet the unease lingers. What other secrets die with her? Justice creeps slow, but Betsy's blood cries out. As the rain drums a steady rhythm, the echo of that knife's final thrust fades into the gloom. Pam's lies dissolving like mist, but another chill stirs, a whisper of betrayal in the night, drawing us toward the next shadowed tale.